Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of I Want to Talk About You, interesting conversations with interesting people, with me, Tim Russell. Earlier this year, one evening, I was sitting in the garden with a cold beer, as I sometimes do, and listening to my Spotify Discover weekly playlist, a playlist that suggests new and old music that you might enjoy based on your previous listening habits. Doesn't always get it right, but this time it really delivered the goods with a song called Mr. Sunshine by a band called Joanna. It was a bit Happy Mondays, a bit early verve, right in my street basically. So I checked out the album, Hello Flower, which delivered much more of the same. It sounded way too authentic to be the work of some young revivalist, so I did a bit of Googling, and it turned out that Joanna were indeed a late 80s Manchester band whose one album was never released, lay forgotten in a box for decades, and was finally rediscovered, remastered, and released in 2025. It sounded like an amazing tale, so I got in touch with them via Instagram to see if they fancied telling their story on my podcast, and I was delighted when their guitarist Tyler Holt replied with a yes. So we had a great chat about how the band got together, their early influences, their electric live shows, and how they recorded the demos that would eventually become Hello Flower, and how those demos remained lost and hidden away for so long. It's a great story of what might have beens and second chances, and like the album itself, it's a great nostalgia trip for anyone who loved this kind of music back in the late 80s and early 90s. So get your maracas out, do your Bez dance, and enjoy the story of Joanna, the best Manchester band you've never heard, with my guest, Tyrone Holt. Tyrone, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. I know it's a bank holiday over there in Manchester, so thanks for taking the time to join me. It's sunny, is it?
Holiday, Tim.
Wow, in Manchester of all places. It's
yes,
sunny here.
We just had Storm Dave out of the way, so the sun's come out for us.
Okay, it's very hot and sunny here in Bangkok. It's like 35 degrees. We're in the hot season now, so it's a little bit too hot. But anyway, well, thanks for joining me. Just give us a quick introduction to who you are and what you're up to at the moment.
I'm Tyrone. I was the guitarist, or still am now, actually, the guitarist in Joanna. Yes, so we're just in the rounds of plotting our next moves for where the band goes next after this recent album release, which was in December last year.
Yeah, so it's a pretty amazing story, which we'll go into detail about it later. You recorded an album in 1990?
Yes,
was it 1990?
Yes, well, it was more of a collection of demos. To be honest, Tim, it wasn't recorded at the time as an album. We recorded Mr. Sunshine in 1990 as a demo, really, to send as a tape, as you did back in those days, to send out to record companies and management companies to try and get a record deal and try and get some airplay. So those recordings, it weren't actually done in one session in a studio. They were a collection of different demos that we put together.
And then it was missing in action for 35 years and then resurfaced, re-released last year, which I think it's got to be the longest ever delay between sort of recording an album and actually getting it released, hasn't it?
Well, we'd possibly like to think so. That would be some hell of a record, wouldn't it?
But yes, anyone listening who knows of a longer delay, let us know.
Yes. Yeah, so we recorded those in the album in different sessions. Some in Pentagon Studios on Widnes, and some in the famous Strawberry Studios in Stockport at the time. So they were. Mr. Sunshine was released, or was out there on a tape to be released as a single, and then we recorded the other tunes later on that year, the back end of 1990, and then we did Gardener's World, which was in early 1991. Which has got a slightly different feel to it. And I don't know if you can tell that from listening to the album. It's the last track on the album, Tim.
Yeah, it's a lot more political than the other stuff on the album as well, isn't it, lyrically?
Because I think at the time, Neil, who was a singer in Joanna, I think he felt that we weren't getting taken seriously writing about smoking weed and trying to cop off with girls. So we wrote something a bit more serious and political, which was around in 1990 and at that time. And yeah, there was debate whether we put that on the album, actually, because it kind of sounds different. I mean, all the tunes were just self-produced. We didn't have a producer. They were just done with the house engineer that recorded us. But that's certainly Gardener's World. I don't know what you think, but that sounds different slightly different to the other tunes on the album. So there was a bit of debate within the band. Certainly Neil was felt it was a bit twee and a bit political. So we had to kind of twist his arm to try and get it onto the album, really.
I don't think it sounds musically that different, but yeah, lyrically it's different to the rest of the album. But it's possibly an interesting direction you might have gone on had you stayed together.
Yes, it was. It would be quite interesting if we would have gone kind of slightly more political. And
Would
that
you
was
get
our
more
attempt,
political?
and Neil's attempt, to be taken a bit more seriously. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's gone down quite well, actually. And I don't know if you've heard the remix. The remix
I have heard the
is-
remix. I was listening to that
Yeah.
this morning. It reminds me a lot of the classic like Manchester remixes, like that people like Paul Oakenfold were doing for Happy Mondays and
Yeah.
things like that. It's got that kind of feel to it. It's really good.
Yeah, and that was the idea. That was the idea behind that. Our record label, New Feelings, that are from America, and Jesse Kivel, who picked up on our story, he wanted to do something similar to that, do like a remix, like a dance remix of the Paul Oakenfold stuff that was that Happy Mondays were doing. I think they've got it spot on as well.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so I mean, I first came across your album. I was sitting in the garden one evening with a cold beer, as I occasionally do, and this song came up on my Spotify. You know, the Spotify have this Discover playlist where it recommends things
Yes.
based on your listening habits that it thinks you might like, and it doesn't always get it right. But this time it got it bang on, and I thought, oh, this is some new band that sounds like all the classic Manchester stuff that I used to like in the late 80s. And then I did a bit of digging to find out who it was, and it was actually a genuine late 80s Manchester band who had disappeared. And that whole album, I think every review has said this, but it's like a real time capsule. It's like going back in time to the late 80s, early 90s when that kind of music was around. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult for us to look back and be objective about it, I suppose. Certainly once. It was about this time last year that all the band got in touch on WhatsApp. So it's difficult to go back and kind of try and imagine what the sound was like with those, kind of take yourself out of it.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do is go back in time. And before we start talking about how the album was rediscovered and it's been re-released, let's go back to the 80s, how the band first got together. When did you form? Was it like mid 80s, late 80s?
It was probably, we think it was probably September 1989, if not slightly earlier. Me and Carl, the drummer, were at Lee Music College together. And Carl had joined a band in Widnes relatively recently. And he said they were after another guitarist. Now, I'd only been playing, Tim, for about 6 months properly. I started off on keyboard, then swapped my keyboard for a guitar and got into the Smiths. And wanted to be Johnny Marr, to be fair. And he saw me in college with my long hair and curtains, and he just thought, he looks like an interesting guy. I'll ask him, does he want to be in a band? And so I said yes, and we went over to Widnes, and Terry, who was on bass, who plays bass with Joanna, was in another band. I can't quite remember who they were, and they were after another guitarist. So I turned up and I played second guitar with this other band. I think we only had 1 or 2 rehearsals that I can vaguely remember. And Carl got in touch and said, we want to form another band. And Terry's got a friend that he works with called Neil, who wants to sing. He's going to ask him to sing. So we just quickly disbanded the first kind of outfit and got together in Pentagon Studios in Widnes. And we used to rehearse a couple of times a week up there. And we quickly formed. We kind of just got going with songs straight away. He had ideas, had guitar ideas, Carl had drum ideas. And I think the first song we wrote was called I Want to Marry Joanna. As you could probably guess what that's about. Although at the time, we didn't really know. We just thought, well, you want to marry a girl called Joanna. We never kind of got the link. So that's kind of how we all first got together. Terry and Neil were printers together in Widnes, and me and Carl were at Music College in Lee, which we discovered later that Sean Keaveney from Six Music was at the same college at the same time.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Small world.
Yeah, it is a small world. So I got in touch with him, and we kind of, with Sean Keaveney, we reminisced about certain people that were at Lee Music College at that time. So I'm originally from Lee, just outside Manchester, and Carl and his family just moved just outside Warrington in Culcheth. And so I used to pick him up on the way to Widnes, and we used to go over to Widnes and record at Pentagon, rehearse at Pentagon Studios over there.
So what were I'm going to ask what your early influences were. I mean, we can hear them quite a lot, that a lot of the stuff that was around at the time, like Stone Roses, Happy Monday, Charlatans, and stuff like that. Was there anything else that you were listening to a lot that you think seeped into the music?
For me personally, it was from guitar point of view, it was Johnny Marr. I was more
Yeah.
influenced by Johnny Marr than I was by John Squire, certainly at that time, early doors. And I was listening to kind of Hendrix at the time as well. But I was kind of a Smiths obsessive. I went to see the Smiths a couple of times, and I saw them in '86 at Salford Uni on the just as Panic was released, and I got close to the front and saw Johnny Marr with his guitar, and I just thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. So certainly my influences were more Smiths based than anything Manchester at the time, Tim.
There's quite a lot of funk in the sound as well. I mean, the rhythm section, listening to the rhythm section on that album is really, really good, especially on the opening track. They work so well together.
It's crazy. I mean, at the time, Carl, who's on drums, was only 16, and Terry was on bass, was only 18. But what they both produced, Terry was so good on the bass, and Carl was so good on the drums. And I was the oldest in the band, and they were probably they were just more proficient than me, or I certainly felt they were at the time on guitar. But yeah, I was certainly influenced by the kind of funkier side of the Smiths as well, like Barbarism Begins at Home and stuff like that. So that's probably where that comes from.
I mentioned the
Certainly-
Stone Roses. It's weird. I think it actually sounds more like the Stone Roses from The Second Coming, even though it came out several years before. 'Cause
Yeah.
maybe they ripped you off. Maybe they heard it. And
That's very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that I don't know where that came from. But yeah, certainly some of the songs like Mr. Sunshine. Because on that, I just recorded two guitar tracks simultaneously with not the intention of putting them together. So there's actually two guitars just together on that tin. We just did two takes and just merged them and left them in the tune.
And you had a reputation back then as a really good live band. I was doing a bit of research for this podcast, and I saw some old live reviews of you. And there's some live footage on YouTube of a gig you did at Manchester International back in the day, which it looks like it was recorded on a potato, but it's you can see, you can just about make out the energy coming off the stage that you were a good live band, and you were getting kids with homemade Joanna shirts turning up at gigs.
Yes.
How long did it take you to sort of find your feet as a live band? Was it an instant thing, or did it take a bit of practice?
Relatively quickly. Well, as soon as we got a set together, we were gigging within 6 months, Tim, and very quickly I've created like a timeline of the band with all flyers and ticket stubs from around the time. So it's within the space of 6 months, really. We only really did about 18 gigs altogether, from those very early pub gigs in Runcorn and Widnes to playing Manchester International and the Ritz on consecutive days, which were big cap venues, the 1,500 cap venues. So it felt like it went really quickly, and it felt like we were good. We were good live. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to go on after us at that time, and we kind of built up a reputation. And the sound was immense, actually.
You supported quite a few fairly big names, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, there was Shaq that were around at the time. We supported them, and another, you might recognise this band. You remember a band called Dr. Phibes and the House of Wax Equation?
Yes, I remember. I saw them live back at my first ever Reading Festival in '92.
Wow,
they were really good.
Yeah, we support. They were a three-piece kind of Hendrixy band, and they were really good live, actually. And they've got a bit of a sad backstory. I don't know if your backstory. The singer ended up killing his mum and ended up in prison, Tim.
Oh, really? Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, and he's just died in prison, I think, last year or the year before. So it's a really kind of weird story. But they had a reputation of being a really good live band. So we supported those in Liverpool, and we supported them somewhere else in Warrington, I think. We supported them as well. And Rig,
also... Rig, yes. Now this is why I think I might have seen you guys before, because I remember seeing Rig at the Sugar House in Lancaster in early 1990, because I was a student in Lancaster back then, and I don't know if you supported them at that gig. And it's also possible that I would have been in the pub instead of seeing the support band as well. So I know, shame on me. Shame on me.
No, we wouldn't have supported them up in Lancaster, but we. They liked us as well, and we liked them, and we seemed to get on with them. And Jonathan Baz Barrett, who was the drummer in Rig, was also an engineer at Strawberry Studios. So he got us into there to record he engineered some of the. I think he did Hey Presto. He did that. We did that over in Strawberry Studios, and I can remember very little about it, to be honest. But weirdly, I just live around the corner from Strawberry Studios now.
Okay.
But yeah, so Rig were really big supporters of us, and I think Rig, they were seen as the next big thing as well. That it wasn't just us that were around, that were bubbling around the surface to hit the big time.
Yeah,
There
I
was a
remember
band
seeing
called-
them live, and they were really, really good. And then they like you guys, they just seemed to sort of disappear and fizzle out a little bit.
Yeah, I think they kind of internal wranglings, and I think they split and reformed as Flatback Four around that time as well. And I think they got a deal, but I don't think they did anything afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I want to do is get together with Jonathan from Rig and see what his take on the story is, because I think Jonathan now he's a monitor engineer, I think, for Happy Mondays, and he's just been on tour with the Streets and stuff. So it would be good to get back in touch with him actually and see what his take of all the stuff was from the time.
NME described you as the most popular band in Britain without a record out.
Yes,
At
we'll
the
take
time.
that every day of the week, Tim.
Yeah. You must have
I
thought
can-
back then that you were going to make it. You must have thought you had a lot of record label interest, didn't you? And you must have thought, oh, we're going to be big.
Yeah, we certainly thought we were good enough. I think at the time, and even now looking back, I'm not sure if we're just 6 months too late. We're kind of in between. We're kind of too late for the Manchester scene and probably too early for the Britpop scene. Because certainly at the time, I used to go to Wigan Pier on a Wednesday night, which was the indie night.
Yeah.
And there was Richard Ashcroft from Verve, who was just getting into a band at that time, because my ex-missus went to college with all the lads from the Verve.
Ah, okay.
So they were kind of bubbling under the surface, and they were looking to get gigs in around Manchester about that time. So and I'm probably thinking about it, we're probably closer to the Verve in sound, certainly the first album, than probably where we were at the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays, and certainly Northside and Paris Angels and all those guys. I think we're probably closer musically to the Verve, and then of course later Oasis. Because when we played in Manchester, we played the Boardwalk several times, which was the kind of epicenter of the Manchester scene.
Yeah, I lived in Manchester for about 6 months in 91, 92. So yeah, I used to go to the Boardwalk. Again, it's possible I might have seen you at the Boardwalk. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
91, 90, certainly wouldn't have done in 92, but you might have been just too late, Tim, to see us. It was probably late 1990, early 91.
Yeah, I would have been too late. I also saw Verve in Manchester in 91 supporting Moose and Stereolab. They were bottom of the bill.
Oh,
It
wow.
must have been one of their early gigs in Manchester in 91. But they were already. Richard was already performing like he was playing to 100,000 people, even though it was a little place with about 100 people in it.
Even him dancing, he used to dance at Wigan Pier, and he looked like he would look like a rock star. Then he looked like a young Mick Jagger with all hair and arms and stuff like that. And he's a good-looking chap, to be fair. And they've done okay, haven't they? They've done okay.
They did do very okay.
Yeah.
So you told us a little bit about the recording of the album. That it was more a sort of bunch of different demos. Why did you never sort of get around to the stage of recording a full album, do you think?
Well, we were just after that one. We didn't really know which was our strongest tune. We thought Mr. Sunshine was good. And we did. We played at Liverpool Poly, and we did a live recording of another tune called Under Your Hat, which is not on any of the recordings, actually. It's on the international gig. And we put those two on the tape as a live recording, and then Mr. Sunshine as a potential single. And all we wanted to do was send it out and we either wanted a development deal, or we wanted people to, or we just wanted to get signed. I think that felt like the peak of what you did as a band. We just sent out tapes, and we wanted to get a record deal, and we thought that was the best way to do it. I mean, at the time, we had a good friend of mine, Martin Royal, who just loved us, and he thought we were great live, and we decided he should manage us. He wanted to manage us, and we wanted him to manage us. So we took it on himself, and we just kind of self-managed ourselves, and we just thought, right, what do we do? Let's get a tape out, send it out to record companies in a jiffy bag, and people wrote back to you. There's this kind of almost pre-email and pre-phones, and people did. We've still got Martin still got, our manager still got handwritten letters from record companies, from Factory Records, and from Craig Cash. Remember Craig Cash, who did Royal Family?
Yep.
So he was working with John Ronson then and Caroline Ahern at KFM in Stockport. So we just sent demos to anyone and everyone that we thought would be interested. And of course, Factory at that time, they had Northside and Happy Mondays. And we weren't musically in the same ballpark, really. But they did write back to us. There's a guy called, we still got a handwritten letter from a guy called Phil Sachs from Factory Records. That said, look, we don't think you're a factory band, but we want to come and see you. So they got them. They asked us to get on the guest list for the international gig, actually, Tim. So that was the kind of thinking behind it. So we just thought, let's get a single out there, and hopefully we can get a deal to do a full album. Because at that time we probably didn't have enough tunes for a full album. You know, we probably did by the end. We probably did have 11 or 12 tunes that we could have put on as a full album. But yeah, so we just ended up recording different tunes, maybe with the thought of putting out an EP. So that's what we were thinking, that we wanted to get picked up, and it just never quite happened.
Never quite worked out right. And
Yeah.
what happened to those? So why did things fizzle out, and when and why did you decide to call it a day, that it wasn't going to work out?
Yeah, we did a series of pretty high profile gigs, and then we did a London showcase, and Neil, our singer at the time, that's the singer, he tells a story that we went to London, he bumped into a girl that he knew from school, and he told her, I'm going to be a rock star, and we're going to be a famous band, and she laughed in his face, and it kind of put him in a really bad mood for this London showcase, and we never quite recovered from that loss of confidence, really. And it felt like people were saying, oh, we've got the Happy Mondays and we've got Northside, and we couldn't kind of quite break that Manchester. And it felt like the scene had moved on, and it felt like we were just 6 months too late, really.
Yeah, I know. When I was living in Manchester in 91 and 92, I was doing like a postgraduate course there. And I went there expecting that the clubs would all be playing all the Manchester stuff, and they weren't. They'd already sort of moved on. It was seen as kind of a bit passé already in 91, 92.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we were young, of course. It was 6 months is much longer time when you're 16 and 17 and 18. And it felt like things had stopped. Instead of just saying, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's carry on writing, carry on rehearsing. You know, like people's lives moved on. Neil had got a job. I was looking to go to university. So it just kind of fizzled out, really.
And what happened to those album recordings? Because they were lost for 35 years. We won't talk about how they were found yet, but what happened to them? Did they just disappear, or shoved in a box and forgotten about?
Well, we think so. We think Martin, our manager, had them. And he moved to the Isle of Man a few years later. So we think he had without going into how we discovered them, we think he had them at some point.
So they were hidden away on the Isle of Man, so no wonder you didn't find them for so long.
Yeah, we weren't interested. You know, when we split in probably the end of 91, everyone went their separate ways. We kind of weren't too worried about. We had a couple of cassettes. I had a cassette of Gardener's World, but a lot of the tunes were still on 1/4-inch reel tapes.
Did you fall out, or you were still mates?
No, we didn't. There wasn't no animosity. There was no bad feeling, really. It just kind of felt that we'd missed the boat. But instead of sticking it out and doing like the Verve and the Oasis did, we just had other things that we were doing, and it just fizzled. It just fizzled out, Tim, as far as I can remember, really.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were kind of a bit too late for the whole Manchester thing, and a bit early for Britpop, because Britpop, there was a bit of a second wave of Manchester stuff, wasn't there? There's Oasis, obviously.
Yeah.
There was the second Stone Roses album. There was Black Grape. There was the Charlatans, were probably bigger than ever.
Yeah.
Probably. Did you not think at that time maybe we should give it another go and reform?
Well, certainly not in my mind. Like I say, I think I'd moved on and I went to university and stuff, and I've never kind of thought about getting back into the band. But what I find interesting now, Tim, as well, is all the bands that you've named. I mean, they're all still going, and
Yeah.
they've obviously stood the test of time. Even the Happy Mondays. I saw the Happy Mondays supporting James at the Ritz in God knows, but in the late '80s, and they were shambolic. And to think then, when I saw them, that they would still be going now and banging out the tunes, it
Yeah, well,
just would have,
I saw
yeah.
them in Lancaster in '89. It was the week they got on Top of the Pops the first time. It was when the Manchester Rave On EP was
I
out.
think Stone was that one. The Stone Roses on the same one, on the same
Yeah,
Top of the
yeah,
Pops, was it?
yeah.
Yeah,
So I saw them in Lancaster the same week, and it was still one of the best gigs I've ever been to because the atmosphere in the venue was
yeah,
amazing because this band had broken through, and they were brilliant. They were shambolic, but in a really good way. And
yeah,
it was a fantastic gig. And I've seen them again since, and they were terrible. You know, they're one of these bands like New Order. You know, you see them on a good night, they're amazing. You see them
yeah.
on a bad night, and they're they can be a bit of a mess.
Yeah, but I mean, they've stood the test of time. Even the Charlatans.
Yeah.
We supported the Electric Crayons at the Boardwalk, or we played with them, and just after Tim Burgess had left. But you know, even the Charlatans are still doing it, aren't they? It's just North Side are back. The Happy Mondays, Stone Roses have reformed and stuff. You know, it's just kind of think those bands have stood the test of time, and even like the first Stone Roses, you know, it's going to be one of the best debut albums of all time. So we were up against some good competition, to be fair, as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Well,
as though they were just
there's still a lot
disbanded.
of blokes our age who want to relive our youth and go
Yeah,
and see those bands as well, isn't there?
yeah, definitely.
What did you all do during the long absence? I mean, obviously, I know you've played in other bands, haven't you? What have the rest of the band all been doing for the last 35 years?
Yeah, well, Neil and Terry formed a band called the Chimps, like a skiffle band afterwards. So that kept them occupied. And Terry, initially, when he first left Joanna, he joined a band called Fish Monkey Man that had a record deal out. They were from Liverpool. And I think he quit his job and he went on a little bit of a tour and did an album. And then Carl, who's a drummer who now lives in Los Angeles, he joined a band called Joyrider, who was on Top of the Pops. They're from Northern Ireland. He's a drummer on that, so he got to go on Top of the Pops. And then he joined a band called Half Man, Half Biscuit that you
Oh, of
might
course, yeah.
recognise, being a man of
Heard
the
of
same
them.
age, Tim. Yeah, so he played with them, and he's still good friends with them. And then he joined a band called Kisses over in America, and they went. He went touring the world with Joe Cocker and played in Brazil and stuff. So Carl, who is now on the other side of the pond, he's still involved in music over there now.
And you yourself as well, you're still a musician as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so I've played with other bands after, not initially. It was a good couple of years before I started playing again. But I met a couple of people over in Liverpool that I played, but kind of got into trip hop in the early '90s. We were kind of influenced by Portishead and Massive Attack and that kind of stuff. So I joined a female singer called Miriam Lemen over in Liverpool because that's where I went to university. And then later after that, me and Terry got back in touch and we formed a band called Supergiant, who's like funk. It's a funk band, funk and soul band, or groove band, really. So that's what we've been doing for the past 10 years or something like that. So I had known Terry on and off. There'd been a big gap where we'd lost contact. But yeah, we've been playing in another band. Actually, I play bass in this band and he plays guitar, so we swap roles. Yeah, so that band's still going, but we're not as active what we should be. But yes, we're still playing, we're still doing stuff.
Okay. And then we've drawn out the suspense this long. Big moment in 2025 when the album was rediscovered. Where was it eventually found?
Yeah, so we friends of mine who've been in Manchester for 30 odd years, they just moved back. They were selling their apartment, and he said, "I've got some. We're just clearing out the loft, and I've got some old Joanna tapes, some 1/4-inch reel tapes, 2 1/4-inch reel tapes that say Joanna on them." I said, "No, really?" So we don't really know how they ended up in his loft. We think it was through a mutual friend. We think our manager Martin, who went to the Isle of Man, must have given them to our mutual friend Will, who lived in Old Trafford. He must have given them to my mate Will to give to me or to give to back to the band. So they were only discovered if they'd not moved. If they'd not moved, the tapes would be probably still lying in his loft. And when I went over to see them when they just moved, he gave me the tapes. So there's 2 1/4-inch Ampex reel tapes with 7 think it was 7 songs on there that were recorded all through 1990. And the last tune, Gardener's World, was done in 1991, which was on a DAT tape. But these tapes were on were on an Ampex 1/4-inch reel tape. So I thought, I've got to extract, get the tunes off the tape. So I got in touch with a guy called Chris from Audio Restoration Manchester, and I rang him up and said, "Look, I've got these 1/4-inch reel tapes. Can you get the tunes off and digitize the songs for us?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "How old are they?" I said, "Oh, 35. You must be 35 years old." And he said, "Oh, have they been in a loft?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oof, that's the worst possible place they could be." He said, "They might just fall to bits when I put them on the reel." I said, "Oh, well, we've got to try, Chris." So I went over and dropped the tapes off with him. And he said, "Oh, what we've got to do, we've got to bake the tapes." So they bake the tapes, especially the old Ampex tapes were notorious for falling to pieces. So we said, we have to slow bake these tapes, Tim, at 50 degrees Celsius.
What does baking do to them?
Yeah, so it solidifies them and it stops them falling to pieces. So they bake them between 4 and 6 hours and slow bake them like a jacket potato. And he did. He said, "I can't guarantee the tunes are not going to be." Well, he said, "I can't guarantee the tunes or the tapes are not just going to fall to pieces." And he said, "Sometimes the sound quality is really bad and deteriorates." So I gave him these tapes after he told me this slightly pessimistic view of what could happen. And then the next day he rang me. He said, "You're not going to believe this. The tapes," he said, "there's hardly any. They've not fallen to pieces." And he said the quality is absolutely great on them. So yeah, at that time, it must have been about this time last year, Tim, of April last year, we'd formed a WhatsApp group with the band, and we just said, "Look, we'd found these tapes," and I'd got them digitized, and we sent the tunes, which were unmastered at the time. We sent the tunes over to Carl, who was in Los Angeles, and his boss, Jesse Kivell. He's got a record label called New Feelings, or he just started this record label called New Feelings. And coincidentally, he was a big fan of Manchester late 80s, early 90s Manchester sounds. So Carl cheekily played him these songs, the 7 songs that we'd had digitized. He played the songs to Jesse, and Jesse said, "Look, I want to release the songs. I want to release these songs." So it was like a magical moment, really.
Must have been. What was it like hearing those songs for the first time for like 35 years?
Yeah, it was very surreal. And certainly some of them I couldn't even remember what I played and where I played it on the guitar, because weirdly, I've still got the same guitar after 35, 36 years. And Terry, who's on bass, he's still got the same bass guitar. I've got a Fender Super Reverb 1974 valve amp. So I've still got the same guitar amp, and I've still got the same guitar as what I had in 1989. So it was brilliant to hear them back.
Was everyone enthusiastic about it?
They were, yeah. We just couldn't believe it. Really, we couldn't believe, because at the time it felt like the recordings had not quite captured what we were about live. A bit like what Oasis did. I don't know if you've seen the Oasis documentary with Supersonic. Yeah. They couldn't quite capture what they'd done live, and it felt exactly the same.
Same with the Smiths. Same with the Smiths as well. When they were unhappy with their debut album. Same with Joy Division as well. I mean, I know Unknown Pleasures is a classic, but I was listening to a podcast with them, and I think when they first heard Unknown Pleasures, they hated it because it didn't sound anything like what they sounded like live.
And it is, we can completely understand that. And we just wanted to try and capture what we did live, but we never felt like the record. Maybe Mr. Sunshine did a little bit, but we felt like it didn't quite capture what we were like live. We were just good live, and we just wanted to capture that. And because we're inexperienced in the studio and we just had engineers, there was no producer. We didn't have John Leckie or Stephen Street or someone to take it to the next level, really. And that's kind of what was missing. So after we absorbed the tunes and a good listen to them, we just thought they sound great. And of course, Jesse over in New York in America, he felt the same way. He obviously had a connection with them. And he just said, "I want to release them. I want to put them on vinyl. I want to do a short run of." So we worked over the past 12 months. We worked on an album cover. And the album cover is a photograph that was taken in the rehearsal rooms in Widnes in Pentagon Studios. And then we had the tunes mastered over in Los Angeles by a girl called Rebecca that Carl knows over there, and they were sounding fabulous. The only thing we didn't have was Gardener's World. We didn't have the DAT. That was done on the DAT instead of on the 1/4-inch tapes. So we only had a cassette. So the version you hear on the album is just taken from a cassette and mastered and tweaked from the cassette.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it just felt magical to get them down and digitized. And we just got to be thankful for Jesse for having the guts and putting a bit of financial backing behind putting the album out. And he arranged interviews, and he got the remixes done for us. So it just felt slightly surreal, but absolutely brilliant to be back. And it feels like the tune's good enough to be out there.
Yeah, I mean, how's the album been received? I love it, and I when I first heard it, I was like sharing it with everyone I know. Most people who didn't
Brilliant.
care, but
Thanks,
a couple of people said, "Wow, yeah, this is great. This is amazing."
Yeah, we couldn't believe it really, because it just got album of the week in Stereo Gum, and it got Mojo give it 3.5 stars and said, what could have been if John Leckie would have got a hold of it. Other people have said it's it's the missing link between Manchester and Britpop, and why did these guys not get a record deal at the time? So it felt, I don't know, it felt good to finally get the tunes out there and people to respond to it. And Lauren Laverne's played us on Six Music. She played the remix of Gardener's World. And then there's a radio station in Los Angeles where Sly Stone's daughter played it over in America. And after that, on Spotify, because of course we put it on Spotify, we released the album first, so there was 200 albums that sold out. And then we put it on the dreaded Spotify, and at a certain point we had 55,000 monthly listeners. So it just went absolutely bonkers.
That's amazing. And you did a gig in December as well. Is that your first gig for 35 years?
That was even more surreal. Yeah, it got to that point where we knew the album was going to happen. And I don't know if you know this, but if you bought the vinyl album, Tim, there was a 15-minute live CD inside the vinyl. And in another weird and wonderful twist of fate, in 1990 we played at Widnes Queen's Hall, which was quite a big venue at the time. We played like a charity gig over there, and a young engineer called Chris Leckie recorded our 15-minute set from that day onto a DAP tape. And then years later, Carl, who was doing a gig with Half Man Half Biscuit or one of his other bands, bumped into this Chris Leckie, the other sound engineer, and they got chatting. And this Chris Leckie, who's now the front of house engineer for Kaiser Chiefs, said, "I've got a DAT recording of yous from 1990." So Chris Leckie had a DAT recording of a 15-minute live gig we did in 1990. So we've had that digitized, and that's on a CD that you get with the album.
Wow,
and that's got 3 tunes on it.
So how was your first gig back together?
Yeah, so we'd after we knew the album was going to be out, we thought, shall we do it? Shall we? No, surely not. So we had a bit of to and fro, and I've just like it just had to happen, Tim. So very quickly we decided we were going to do it, and we didn't want it to be like a disappointment. We wanted it to be small and intimate. So we looked around venues in Manchester, suitable venues, about 100 and 200 cap. And we found this place. I knew some of these guys that run this place called Low4 Studios, just off Deansgate in Manchester. So we booked that, and we rehearsing for the first time. Because, of course, we didn't have a drummer. Carl was over in Los Angeles. So he recorded his drums separately. So me, Neil and Terry would rehearse to those drum tracks. And very quickly, of course, we learned all the tunes at home separately. I had to work out what I'd played, and then we got together in Stockport, and we just smashed the tunes out, and it sounded great, even with the Carl's drum tracks. So Carl came over early December, just a week before the gig, and we only had 2 full rehearsals with him, really. And we did like an unannounced private gig in a pub in Widnes, in front of a handful of people the week before the gig, and it was fantastic. It was weird how we just all felt the tunes just played themselves. Once we got into it and we could remember what we played, it's almost like the songs just played themselves.
Amazing. And you've got plans for more gigs? Are you going to do more?
Yes, so this is the next move. We're currently working on doing a mini tour. So we're looking at a London gig, a Manchester gig, and then a Glasgow gig later in the looking at September, Tim, to try and quote. So we'll do 3 gigs, a little mini tour, culminating in this festival up in Glasgow in September. So that's what it's not been finalised yet, but the dates are in the diary, and we think we can make it work with Carl coming over hopefully for a short stint.
Amazing. And any more new music planned? Have you thought about writing some more and doing new stuff? Or
Well, what we've a couple of songs that we had this, like I say, we mentioned the first song we ever did was called I Want to Marry Joanna, which was obviously about smoking herbal cigarettes back in the day. So we've been in the studio and we've put the bones down for this tune. So we're going to get Carl when Carl comes over next. Oh, actually, he's done his drums. He recorded his drums in Los Angeles and he sent them over. The magic of the internet. And we recorded our parts to his drum tracks that he'd sent over to a click. So so then later in the year, when he comes back, we'll try and get in the studio again and finish this other song called, which is where we got our name from, which was Joanna. But of course, it had different connotations then. Yes. So yes, it's exciting. Things are still ticking over.
that's amazing. And do you sound different now? I mean, you're all old, and you were kids back then. You were in your late teens, early 20s, and now you're all men of a certain age, as you called me earlier. So I'm going to call it you back.
Well, weirdly, when we kind of rehearsed, I kind of thought, oh, there's going to be guitar parts I'm going to want to change. But I'd kind of noodled around with changing some of the guitar parts, but the original parts that I played, saying I'd only been playing for 6-8 months or something, just suited the song so well. So there's only tiny little bits that I've tweaked when we played live. But yeah, mainly the songs are just as they were. So the song the latest song that we've done is about whether we want it to sound like it's an old sound or whether we wanted to make it sound like we would do now. But yeah, they still sound good, and certainly the Marry Joanna sounds really catchy. It's a really catchy tune. So hopefully we'll release that either later in the year or early next year and see how that goes down.
And I assume at your age, there's less Marry Joanna involved.
Yes,
in the
more
process than there was back
tea.
then. Rock and roll, chamomile
Very
tea.
rock and roll. Yes, an IPA and a cup of chamomile tea.
Yeah, well, when you get to our age, it's the hangovers just get a bit more brutal,
Yes,
don't they?
you can't do it. Well, weirdly, Terry, who's bass player in Joanna, he's just done a gig in Macedonia. So he's with another band. So he's on his way back as we speak. So yeah, he rang me. It's slightly tipsy from Macedonia. And of course, the big thing that we're doing, I don't know if we should mention this, is we're doing a gig in Los Angeles in May.
Oh wow!
Yes, on 22nd of May.
How can you forget to mention that?
Yes,
Tyrone?
I don't know how I've managed to do that. Yeah, I forgot talking about the tour, but yeah. So the main thing we're doing immedately is the 22nd of May. We're playing the Zebulon, which is a 200 cap venue in Los Angeles. We seem to have quite a bit of a following over there. So that'd be interesting if we can sell out that place.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If you were writing new songs today, what would you be writing about? Obviously, you said your interests originally were about smoking weed and chasing women. I guess those things figure less in your lives than they did back then. So,
Neil wrote all the songs, so it would be interesting what Neil could come up with, which we should maybe try and explore. I'm not sure how keen he is to do that, but it'd be interesting if we should try writing some new songs and see what they're about.
Because that Gardener's World is very prescient. If you listen to the lyrics now, I mean, the lyrics make just probably even more sense now in terms of the modern political situation than they did back then.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I think you're right. I think, and I think that's what swung it with with us deciding to put it on the album, because Neil, like I said, Neil didn't want to put it on there, but we just thought, well, it is more. I'd listened to it and thought it's great. And certainly the ending, it's got a great end to it. It's got saxophone on it and percussion. But it felt more relevant now than what it did back in 1990, 91. So we felt that was the deciding factor that it had to go on the album. We thought, oh, we'll just put it on last. But in fact, I think it's one of our strongest tunes.
And I said the remix is great. I'll put a link to your stuff in the podcast description. I'll definitely put a link to the remix as well, because that remix is terrific. It had me. I was listening to it while I was cooking dinner the other night, and I was doing my little Bez dance around the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that's always a good sign. Something gets me doing the Bez dance in the kitchen. That's a good sign.
Get your maracas out.
Get the maracas out.
It was more reimagined, because it's taken my guitar bits and it's taken some of the vocals and it's just messed it up with it a little bit. And we're hoping that it might get plays out at some festivals in the summer. And Lauren Laverne seemed to like it on Six Music, and she played it a couple of times, giving us a bit of a push and a bit of promos, telling our backstory. So that was really good for us as well.
Excellent. No, it's great. You're finally belatedly getting the coverage you deserve.
Yeah, it feels that way, Tim. It feels that way.
And how about you? I mean, you mentioned these days you work for the Halley Orchestra now, which is a bit of a musical leap.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got a job. I always wanted to do something within music, and I got a job. There's an international concert hall in Manchester called the Bridgewater Hall, which I worked at there for 20 years almost. And of course, the Halley Orchestra, that's their home, is the Bridgewater Hall. So I, about 5 or 6 years ago, I jumped ship and joined the Halley Orchestra and kind of worked from that side of it now. So I work over in Ancoats in Manchester, working for the Halley Orchestra. Yeah.
Excellent. And what sort of stuff do you listen to now? Do you listen to a lot of new music, or do you listen to the old stuff, or what
a bit
music?
Of both, really. I always try and feel like I need to listen, be about what's going on now. Be trying to get into the Geese album. Yeah, not quite there yet. I'm not quite sure what I think of them completely.
I've had a go at that. I'm not really a fan, got to say.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they're slightly hyped at the minute. And me and Terry try and go to Manchester Psych Fest every August, September, to kind of keep abreast of what's coming up. Of course, we've never heard of any of the bands that are around. we try and go to gigs as much as we can. Yeah, I've just been to see Gorillaz at Co-op Live, so I'm trying to keep down with the kids. And listen to new stuff. It's mainly old stuff, because as you get older, I just find I'm getting too cynical of music. So I'm trying to be less judgmental and trying to go with new bands.
Yeah, well, that's how I discovered you, was listening to the Spotify Discovery mix, which usually sends me a lot of new stuff. It occasionally throws old stuff in.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've just been put on like a Spotify playlist for new music. I was like, well, is it new music? It is kind of new music.
35 years old.
I thought, should I tell people it's 35 years old? Or they would just go with it and say it's a new tune. It'd be difficult. Yeah, I don't know if how I would feel about if I heard it and think, is that a new tune? Yeah.
Well, I like to try and listen. I like to try and listen to new music. But my next concert I've got tickets for is Kraftwerk. So that's
Oh yes, I saw them at the Bridgewater. Are they in 3D?
They do what they call a multimedia tour. They're coming to Bangkok in May, and I was so excited. I got tickets straight away, and I had
the pleasure of working with them at the Bridgewater Hall a few years ago, and it was absolutely spectacular. Yeah, highly recommend it. Yeah,
I'm stupidly excited for that. For a man of my age. So
have you got to have the 3D glasses on as well?
I don't know if it's the 3D one. I'm not sure.
I think it might be.
Okay, that'll be good. If it stops people using their phones and holding their phones up all the way through the gig, I'm in favour of that, because that's a bit of an epidemic here in Bangkok.
It is, isn't it?
Having to watch Git through a sea of phones, it pisses me off.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it makes you wonder how long it'll be before. I know over in Manchester now there's a thing with clubs stopping people going into nightclubs with phones, and you've got to hand them over. It makes you wonder how long it is before they do it with gigs, rock and roll gigs as well.
I think some artists do it. I heard when Bob Dylan did some theatre shows in London a few years ago, you had to hand your phone in. I think there's a few artists starting to do it. I mean, it's feasible at theatre shows where you can put like a little phone security box in the seat that people have to put their phones in.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good idea because it annoys me trying to watch gigs through like 200 phones in front of you. But I'm
It's
just a
true.
grouchy old man who remembers
Yes.
the way things
Yeah,
were back in my day. So I don't want
it
to be
is.
that guy. I don't want to be that
I
grumpy
mean,
old
it's really
guy.
tricky because, of course, if phones would have been around when we were around in the 1990s, things would have been a whole lot different because there's hardly any band photographs of us, Tim, from the time. There's some ropey photographs from recording studios and out of focused shots from some gigs. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? And there is something kind of nostalgic about that. But in
Yeah, I'm
some
glad
ways,
phones weren't around when I was 18 or 19. To be honest, I'm glad that
yeah.
there's no evidence.
Yeah, I've just got all those hazy memories of gigs that I've been to. Yeah, there's lots of. I mean, it's interesting with all the band when we got together. There's lots of interesting. Some of the members, like Terry and Neil, can remember in fine detail about certain things where I had no recollection of, and there's other things that I can remember and they can't remember. So we've all got kind of slightly different hazy memories of back then.
Well, you're making new memories now. That's the good thing.
Yes, that's what it feels like now when we've got more photographs than you can poke us. We've got more photographs now within the last year of what we did have back in the 35 years.
Are you all better looking now, or were you better looking back in the day? Or is that a
Ruggedly
stupid
handsome, I
question?
think. Just like a
Ruggedly
fine
handsome.
wine. Yeah, I mean, I look at some of the photographs of me. I was just almost emaciated with long hair. My kids can't believe it's me. There's one picture of me in a white t-shirt and my guitar, and all my hair's covered in my face, and I just look like some kind of
How do your
yeah.
kids feel about having a dad who's in an increasingly famous band? Are they
Yeah,
impressed?
it's interesting because my eldest, he's just getting into music and just getting into playing guitar. So it's I'm trying to encourage him without forcing it because obviously had guitars around the house, and my kids just completely ignored the guitars. They just can become part of the furniture, I think. But as he's got older, he's got a bit more into music and he's picking up the bass, and because I've got a bass guitar in the house as well. So fingers crossed, it'll inspire him to join a band and do something similar.
Excellent. Well, Tyler, thanks so much for joining me, giving an hour of your bank holiday. You can go down the pub now if that's what you do on a bank holiday.
Cheers, Tim. I'll have a chamomile tea.
A chamomile tea. Good. That's it. Live the dream, the rock
Live
and
the
roll
dream.
lifestyle. Well, good luck with the album and the upcoming gigs. I hope it continues to get you a lot of attention. 'Cause like I say, it's anyone listening to this podcast who was into the whole Manchester scene in the 80s, 90s, check the album out because it's absolutely superb. Like I said, it's like a time capsule. It's a real nostalgia rush,
Cheers, Tim.
and I've been really enjoying it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
No problem. There's links in the podcast description so you can listen to Tyler and his band's work. And if you're in Los Angeles in June or
May.
in May, sorry, or Manchester, London, or Glasgow in September, was it? Did I remember that right? Then go and check them out. So thanks a lot, Tyler.
Cheers, Tim. See you
All right,
now.
cheers. All the best.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Well, what a great story, and thanks so much to Tyrone for taking the time to share it with us. If you've not heard the album yet, there's a link in the description along with a link to Joanna's Instagram profile. If you're into that late 80s, early 90s Manchester sound, then do check it out. You'll love it. Don't forget to like, share, rate, and subscribe to I Want to Talk About You. It really helps with my visibility on the various platforms and on social media. And if you'd like to collaborate, either as a guest, sponsor, or advertiser, or you just want to buy me a beer or a coffee, email me on iwttay.podcast@gmail.com, and that address is in the description too. Next time out, my guest is American writer Robert Rickelman, whose memoir of alcoholism and mental illness, Jumping to the End, is out next month. It's one of the best books I've read in ages, and I can't wait for you to hear our conversation, which we recorded a few weeks ago. It's been sitting in the cloud waiting for the book to come out, and it's well worth the wait, believe me. Until then, thanks for listening, and see you next time.